Matthew, one thing that people don't talk about enough, in my opinion, with the Great Depression is how the people who lived through it really didn't appreciate how good the economy was just before the Great Depression.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think those people were kind of selfish, but we're not going to make the same mistake, right?
No, right. Those people were definitely standing in bread lines thinking like, maybe this could have been avoided, or why are we in this situation? Instead of thinking like, remember how bombed the stock market was like literally a month ago?
Exactly.
And I just think that, we just owe it to each other as Americans to remember how awesome the economy was.
Yeah, I mean, I was having this conversation with a friend of mine who just diagnosed for cancer, have it really bad. And I said to them, I said, listen, look on the bright side. Before you had cancer, you were cancer free. They gave me a big hug.
Mm-hmm. They forgot about that.
And he said, thank you. Thank you. So I think we have to look on the bright side of the past. And I think we'll all get through this.
Right. People with cancer, you'll hear them complain a lot about the cancer, but you rarely hear them talk about how little cancer they used to have.
Yeah, it's just the wrong way to look at things.
Specifically in the period leading right up to them having cancer.
Yeah, when they didn't have the cancer.
They had so little cancer. Oh, man. What strange times we are living in, Matthew.
Oh, my. Oh, my.
I guess I'm at least well prepared for another Great Depression because get ready for the, what's it called? Is it called a rim shot? Or is that a sex thing?
That's a rim job.
A rim job. Okay.
And everyone should get prepared for one. I mean, you're lucky.
Get ready for both. Okay. The rim shot is, I've been living with the Great Depression for a long time, so I'm kind of used to it.
Yeah. I think now that joke got ruined.
I think I ruined it.
Yeah. Now everyone's thinking about rim jobs and it's got to move on from that.
Anyhow. So
yeah, but things with immigration are getting better at least, right? So it's Friday. So you know what Friday means?
Yeah, Friday means we get a big surprise from the Department of Justice.
DOJ.
In the form of some sort of obscure but highly problematic precedent decision from the Board of Immigration Appeals. Did we get one this week?
Oh, we did. Matter of Herrera Vasquez.
Okay.
So this is a presidential decision. And the first thing that should stick out for is on the decision, it will list who the attorneys are. And it says for respondent pro se. Now, pro se is not this like really high powered attorney from LA, maybe like Cambodian in origin or
His
something.
His name is Say, and he's a pro.
Yeah. Pro se means he did not have an attorney. And we're not going to get really into the issues of the case because they're pretty esoteric, but it relates to the MPP program, the Migrant Protection Protocol program. And it's about a gentleman, I believe from Honduras, who came to seek asylum, was put back into Mexico, and he was in this program. So he would have to come to the border, be allowed to enter to the immigration courts and have his case heard. So what immigration is doing in these cases, when it notices to appear, there's a couple boxes they can check, whether it's an arriving alien, whether they're entered without inspection, and top of my head, I can't think of the third box. Those are kind of important designations for reasons we're not really going to get into, but those boxes weren't checked. And this is kind of a long line of Department of Homeland Security not really given to if they actually follow the procedures they're supposed to follow. So there's an immigration judge down there at the border who was looking at these saying, okay, well, this is not done properly. I don't have jurisdiction over this case. And he terminated the case. Now, he did this for hundreds, apparently, of immigrants in the same thing. Many of them were represented as well. And Department of Homeland Security would have appealed these cases. And the BIA decided, probably sifting through them, and said, hey, here's a guy who wasn't represented. Why don't we take up this case instead of someone who was represented. And they did ask for
I'm sure they filed 0 arguments.
Well, I mean, they received briefs from DHS and amici curiae. They don't say who the amici was in this case, but probably Ayla and some other people. But the one sentence that had me like ready to throw my 8-year-old through a window out of frustration was,
wait, what?
Yeah.
Can you come up with another?
No, because he was like right by me, bothering me at the time. You almost
murdered your child. I mean, I'm watching out for you. I mean, if that's it's
the first story window. He just would have been scraped up. Come on.
Okay, that's the example you want to go with.
Made me flip my desk / kitchen table.
Okay.
So in it says, there has been no response to our request or DHS's appeal from the respondent.
Weird.
Yeah, the respondent is in Mexico. The respondent has no idea what's going on.
Right. So you mean the Honduran man in Mexico
with no attorney,
who probably speaks, what are the English words he knows? Hello, maybe how are you?
Yeah.
Coca-Cola.
Okay.
Okay. And this is not to insult this person, of course. He's never lived here, so why would he know English? He should have somehow put together some sort of legal brief and filed it with the board.
Yeah. I mean, this is like Castro Tum, where, they picked on unrepresented individual to issue pretty sweeping decision. Here it's the same way. And what the BIA kind of expects out of DHS in their requirements to file notices to appear is really laughable. I think right now, DHS, if they scribbled, you need to go to immigration court on a napkin with crayon, like the Board of Immigration Appeals would be, yeah, that's solid. I mean, that's we know what they meant. And
right.
That would have been just fine.
It's a notice.
Yeah.
To appear.
Yeah. It's telling them to go to immigration court. It's not saying where, when. It's not letting the judge know, what status he's in, what type of hearings he's going to conduct. But, just, whatever. Maybe one day we can get into the kind of the nitty gritty of what the decision really means. But I don't really think it's as important as how the BIA now is acting. You look at all the immigration judges that are now BIA members. We have Cassidy, who was the immigration judge and terrible judge from Atlanta. The latest guy is Montante from Buffalo, who was horrible. They're horrible judges.
I just want to say, I want to give you a little bit of pushback here. I think that they're great.
No, you don't.
I think they're great.
And everyone's going to see right through it. Everyone's going to see right through you. So.
No. I there's, judges, ICE officers, all these people just need to know that whatever disparaging remarks Matthew shares on the show do not necessarily reflect the beliefs of myself, Stephen Robbins, whose case, by the way, was well prepared and deserving of an exercise of discretion. Anyhow, yeah, no, you're right. They're basically stacking the board and the immigration courts.
Yeah, and it's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're starting to see circuit courts push back, and I think we will. So for people who don't know, we have an immigration court, and we have the Board of Immigration Appeals, which is our appellate court, where a lot of laws get made and decided. If we disagree with them, they can go up to the federal circuit courts, where I am the Third Circuit and where Stephen is the Ninth Circuit. And lots of times we can get these bad Board of Immigration Appeals decisions overturned or rectified. But then after that, there is the Supreme Court, which, hasn't been completely terrible with immigration lately. But, the fear is that, especially if Trump wins, it's not going to get any better. Yeah. So it's our Friday decision dump. And
I think
awesome.
I think one thing that's important to remember about the circuit courts, first of all, those courts are also being stacked in record numbers. But also on top of that, you look at something like matter of AB. So, Trump takes office and a few months later, Jeff Sessions, through, the power that he has, took up a case at the Board of Immigration Appeals and said, all this stuff about victims of domestic violence, like it's not really a thing anymore. And there's some great dicta in there about like generally these cases won't be granted. And so we had a recent case in the First Circuit. The Ninth Circuit is, maybe pretty close to making a decision on that, but it's almost 3 years later. And so it's not like, the board issues a bad decision and the circuit court 3 months later comes in and cleans everything up. No, we're talking about 3 or 4 years going between the bad decision and the so-called good decision. That's assuming everything goes your way. And in the meantime, like the amount of human suffering that's happened, in the case of AB, how many pro se people or even represented people have been deported or pre-termitted from being even allowed into the country because of that decision since 2017. So you were trying to be a little optimistic, and I'm just here to say your optimism is misplaced. Wah, wah.
Yeah. And also federal court appeals usually require money. And now lots of times organizations will do them pro bono and whatnot, but nothing the regular person could count on, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you're a sucker like Matthew and I, you end up doing the cases you really care about on like a steep discount or low bono, pro bono. But it is really hard because just like an opening brief at the Ninth Circuit, at least for me, will grind my practice almost to a halt for, a good week. And then oral arguments, if you get oral arguments, it's the same kind of thing. You got to shut it, almost everything down, lock yourself in the room, and really get laser focused on the case at hand. And so, it's not something you can just kind of fiddle around with, unfortunately. Or fortunately, I don't know. But
the Board of Immigration Appeals is really a big deal. And they have been stacking this court. And the thing that really gets me, though, honestly, I have a bunch of cases awaiting decisions from the BIA. I mean, for like over a year, and I can't get a decision. And then I have cases over a year without even a briefing schedule. So all these new judges don't seem to, or board members, don't seem to be making my cases move any faster, at least. So.
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on over there. Maybe there's going to be a wholesale pre-termission of like all the cases, but
let's do a little prediction.
Okay.
The next kind of big decision from the BIA or the Attorney General.
Oh boy, that's a toughie. Well, they just did the hardship one. We talked about, sort of narrowing down the people who can qualify for a certain removal defense. The thing about these decisions, though, is that none of them by themselves are earth-shattering. I mean, they're earth-shattering and life-altering for the people who they affect. And the number of people they affect is not zero, right? But each one is just another blow, death by 1,000 cuts. So it's hard to say that there's one big one coming. My guess will be that it will just be a series of really narrow things that, there's a lot of folks who get paroled in to seek asylum, and then they don't have their first hearing for over a year or close to a year. And you could see them really cracking down on any type of exception to the 1 year filing deadline, even though it's like literally impossible for people to do that sometimes. I don't know, stuff like that. Why? Do you have a prediction in mind?
I do. And I think either BIA or the AG will come out with a decision that allows immigration judges to pre-term asylum applications because of no articulable, particularly social group, prior to the individual hearing.
Oh, right. Yeah.
That's, I think judges have been doing that. And I think specifically, I think Judge Couch, who was in North Carolina, used to do that. And he's the guy who did matter of AB when he was a immigration judge. Now he's on the Board of Immigration Appeals. So that's I think will be the next really big decision. But there might be those other type of decisions in the meantime that kind of carve away at things and really do damage along the way. But, we'll wait and see.
Yeah, really exciting to wait for that next one to drop. I did want to mention something. I tweeted about this last night. Michael Flynn, I guess the case against him was dropped. I'm a little bit confused, to be honest, because I thought he already pled guilty. So I'm not sure. Maybe you know more about the procedural history of that particular case.
They're allowing him to withdraw the plea.
The guilty plea. Oh, okay. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't want to get into the Mueller investigation, all the specifics, but it does seem pretty clear that he lied to the vice president and to the FBI. Now, I guess the FBI agents had some conversations about trying to get him to lie to them, which, just so people know, that's what law enforcement does all the time.
Well, I think it's kind of misconstrued. I think they're basically saying if he lies, we can prosecute him for that. And,
it's just true.
So the thinking that Michael Flynn is this unsophisticated rube, right?
Right.
He's just this poor little innocent man who just happens to have made it to the rank of general, right?
Right.
Who's going to be a national security advisor, had worked in national security for the vast portion of his career, certainly has interacted with law enforcement, FBI, and all these things. That this poor little innocent man was duped, right?
Right.
And was railroaded and couldn't have possibly known that lying to the FBI was wrong.
Right. How could he have known?
I'm going to start using parts of this for my cases, my fraud cases, because one of the things they said is they had no predicate. There was no reason to be investigating him. So therefore, for example, if the FBI showed up at your office and said, Stephen, we just want to talk to you. And they started asking you a whole bunch of questions. And then you end up lying to them. But they had really no investigation of you. I mean, they just walked by your office and decided to see if they could get you to lie. Yeah, I would think that would be wrong. But they actually had a reason. But now I'm thinking of a client of mine who she applied for a tourist visa back in 2012 in her country. She had put that her husband and her were living together. Her now ex-husband were living together. She got the tourist visa. She came here a couple times. And then she went back and she came back. And then she ended up getting divorced from that husband, marrying a U.S. citizen, and was going get her green card. And in the interview, they said, were you and your ex-husband, did you guys ever separate? And she said, yeah, we did. Back in 2010, we separated. Now, the officer never asked, did you get back together, which they had. So the officer used this, that they were separated in 2010 to say that when she applied for the tourist visa in 2012, that she lied to the Department of State when she was getting her visa petition because she put her husband's address as her address. It's really dumb. Hopefully we can overcome it. But why were they asking if her and her husband ever separated? What was the predicate for that? There was no predicate. So even if she did lie, which our argument is that she didn't, it shouldn't matter, right? Because that's the government's argument with Flynn. Even though he lied, it shouldn't matter because there was no good reason to ask him.
Right.
And how many people are in federal jail right now because of the same thing? And if this incident and the whole FISA wiretap stuff and all that stuff, if this makes the Department of Justice and the conservative movement become more attuned to civil liberties and extended civil liberties and rights to everyone and making sure that there's no law enforcement abuse, either for General Flynn or for the average, Black or Latino male, then I am all for it. I say that's great. Let Michael Flynn walk free. But I think we know that's not going to happen.
Right. And this actually, I think in a way ties back to the whole notice to appear issue and the fact that like when police fill out police reports, they complain about the amount of paperwork they have to do, but a good police officer will fill out a very detailed police report with lots of information, and they're required to do that. And it's a good thing that they are. On the one hand, while we're saying these notices to appear, they can be sort of haphazardly filled out and they don't really have to comply with the statute. We're also saying in this one particular case, the FBI needed to meet all these really high standards, which, like you're saying, should exist for everyone and not just for Michael Flynn. It makes me think about a couple different scenarios. I mean, one, just the number of hoops and barriers in place for immigrants who make misrepresentations, sometimes material, sometimes, arguably material, but little tiny things can ruin an immigrant's life forever. And the example that I always think about is the false claim to citizenship. So if you've made a false claim to citizenship for a benefit, which includes employment as it's currently interpreted. So in other words, if you fill out an I-9 form, which is a form you fill out when you get a new job, and there's two boxes, one that says work authorization, permanent resident, and the other one says U.S. citizen. If you mark U.S. citizen, you're barred from getting a green card for life with no waiver. So you can have a teenager who goes to Burger King and, they need some money to help out their family or just to buy school clothes or whatever. And they don't know what this form is and they get nervous, whatever. They just fill it out that way. And then 10 years later, they're married to a U.S. citizen. They've got a couple kids. They can't get a green card through their spouse because of this thing that they put on this form years earlier.
Right. And not only can't they get a green card, if they're put into removal proceedings, they have no defense. They're going to get deported.
Yeah. So it's complicated. So even like a client who at one point had been apprehended at the border, he was from Honduras, and he told Border Patrol that he was from Mexico so that he wouldn't be deported all the way back to Honduras. And instead, he'd just be left in Mexico. That was 25 years ago. Now he's married and he had TPS and he was applying for his green card. Well, they made him apply for a misrepresentation and fraud waiver. So he had to pay, it's like $1,000 and beg for forgiveness from the government and talk about how his wife really needs him and all these things. And we just expect immigrants to constantly be begging for their forgiveness for even the smallest infractions. And on the other hand, Michael Flynn. So, I was thinking, I wanted to bring maybe up one last point, and then I do have to go. I know we don't have time to get to everything today, but so I'm working on this family unity benefits case. Do you have any of those?
What are you talking about?
So it's the form I-817. And basically, like after the amnesty in 1990, they passed a little law that says, well, if you're a spouse or a parent of somebody who got, their green card through the amnesty and you've been here a certain amount of time, then you can get a green card while you're waiting for your visa. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Vaguely. I haven't done one in probably a year.
Yeah, right. So there are these weird cases. I've only got a couple.
Are you just flexing that you're getting to do one?
I'm just, I'm dabbing on all my haters out there. I'm over here doing family unity benefits. No. So the point is, I've only got like 2 of these clients and they come back every couple of years to renew their work permits. But it just got me thinking how, because every time I see one, I have to revisit the requirements because it's a little bit of a unicorn in the immigration world. But it just got me thinking about how arbitrary all of this is. This lady has a work permit because she arrived illegally before a random cutoff date that was set by Congress literally in 1990. And she's, got a father who's a resident and he petitioned for her, but it's backlogged, whatever. But as a result, she's lived her entire life, practically her entire adult life, with employment authorization and a social security number. And somebody who might have come a week later and missed the cutoff date, or, they came early enough, but their father, who's a permanent resident, didn't file a petition for them. They're totally undocumented and they're treated like a common criminal if they're apprehended or whatever. And it just, there's no there's no commonality. There's no sense to any of what we're doing.
Well, there's no flexibility, right? And I think one thing I would like to see, I guess, power given to immigration judges would be to have a lot more flexibility with things, and that there are a lot more flexibility within the system. So, for example, so you have someone who's been here for 5 or 6 years, right? And they have their asylum case has been kind of going on, and maybe it's not the strongest case, but there's something about them that kind of stands out, whatever it is. Maybe they have children, maybe they have a particular skill, maybe there's something. They're just a good person that you can go and talk to, like Department of Homeland Security, and say, hey, I know, it's not like a zero-sum game. Either you win or you lose. Either you get to stay and have status or you get deported. There's something like, Department of Homeland Security could say, hey, you know what? Why don't we give them 2 or 3 years and they can report. And if they stay out of trouble, then yeah, we can agree to this or that. And you're right. And the whole system is so inflexible. And there are all these like bright lines that are like drawn that sometimes it's great for the people who are on one side of it and it's disastrous for people on the other side. But that would require someone actually thinking about issues. And I don't think we're going to get that regardless of who's in the White House in 2021. Was that just so amazing that you're speechless, or have we lost you, Stephen?
Sorry. No, yeah. So
are you just like so blown away? You're like, wow.
It just blew my mind.
Yeah.
So yeah, like on the one hand, my mom's calling me. Declined. Sorry, Mom. On the one hand, yes, judges or some body should be given more discretion. On the other hand, we've seen what happens when you go from the Obama administration to the Trump administration when immigrants rely solely on this thing called discretion. But I'll just read real quick the requirements for this family unity program. And this particular client I'm talking about, she didn't say anything about like, I did it the right way. But you hear that a lot from people who don't really know how. My parents did it the right way. And this lady is doing it the right way. But again, these are the requirements. So she had to have entered the United States prior to May 5th, 1988, or December 1st, 1988, depending on the section of law that applies to you. You must prove that on May 5th, 1988, or December 1st, 1988, you were either the spouse or the unmarried child under 21 of a person who became a legalized citizen. Then there's a bunch of these other requirements. Your qualifying relative on whom you base your application has maintained their legal status. If deceased, your spouse or parent had to have maintained their status until their death. And so blah, blah, blah. If all those things apply to you, then you get a work permit and a social. You can see how a person saying they did it the right way, well, you got lucky. You hit a couple of markers that Congress in 1990, floated out there. And it also shows that when people say how important it is to, obey the laws on the books, well, the laws on the books change all the time. And we're capable of doing something like what you're explaining, just saying, all right, everyone can come forward, apply for a 3-year sort of pre-residency or conditional residency, and then reapply after those 3 years, become a permanent resident. I mean, there's no reason why we couldn't just have amnesty. But
well, let's end on we can end after this. I just want to give some good news and some bad news.
Great.
Okay.
Great.
It seems like a staffer for Donald Trump and a staffer for Mike Pence both tested positive for the coronavirus. But Michael or Vice President Pence or President Trump have tested positive as of yet. So some good news and some bad news.
We'll leave it up to you to decide
which was good and which was bad.
Which was which. All right, Matthew, I love you, and
no, I love you more.
Thanks for brightening up my day with this depressing talk, as we are going to do.
I'm sure this time next Friday, everything's going to be like rainbows and the virus will be gone The economy will be back.
Right.
Everything will be totally awesome.
Well, just remember, if the virus isn't gone and the economy is still in the tank, it used to be pretty good.
Yeah.
So
there was a day that there was no virus and the economy was awesome. And let's hold on to that.
People forget. They don't want to give any credit for that. All right. We'll talk to you next week.
Good night.
Later.
See ya.